What an honor it is to be here today, to worship with you, to celebrate with you as we celebrate the 35th anniversary of Paul's Place. On behalf of Bill McLennan, our executive director, who's also here today, all of our staff and all of our guests, I say thank you for many, many years of supporting us. We can't do what we do every day without you. It wouldn't happen, so thank you very, very much. Now will you please join me in prayer? O Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, for you are our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Amen. And I should have said, I just want to take Voices Rise on the road with me wherever I preach. I don't really need to stand up here and say anything because we have certainly heard the word, but because I was asked and I don't get too much, you're going to hear it. And it's an interesting challenge I have been given today to preach on the 10 Commandments. It's so tempting as a preacher to go through them one by one and talk about how we break every single one daily. But we'd be here forever, wouldn't we? Which ones have you broken lately? How about you? How about you? We'd be here forever. Some preachers, when they preach about the 10 Commandments, just choose one and really delve into it. What it means and how we can follow it, but which one and how do you choose? In this day of hateful rhetoric and acts of violence like we saw this week, I can think of several I would like to remind people about, not the least of which is thou shalt not kill. But what we know is if people really lived by all 10 of them, our world would be amazing, wouldn't it? In fact, it would be much more like the world that God envisions for us, wouldn't it? But it's so hard. I mean, what I really want to say is, God, why'd you set the bar so high? I mean, it's impossible to live by all of the 10 Commandments, isn't it? How can we possibly do it? And yet, God is pretty clear. While leading the Israelites out of Egypt, God lays out amazing promises for them. I'm going to call you my people. Your descendants will number like the stars in the sky. I am going to lead you into a land of milk and honey. What a set of beautiful promises. And I'd be happy with just the first one. I would love to be called a person of God. It's an amazing set of promises. And then God says, well, there's just this small little thing about these 10 rules. Just follow these 10 rules. Don't we love the God of promises so much better than the God of laws and rules? Why, God, did you set the bar so high? Barbara Brown Taylor preached on the 19th chapter of Exodus once, and she used the metaphor of a tent, which is a perfect metaphor for people that are in the wilderness, to explain how it all works together. Because what she says is promise without law is like a tent without poles. Taylor imagines God giving the gift of law. Sink these 10 posts in the center of your camp. Hang a cloth of promises over them, and together you will survive the wilderness. Guard your life together. Guard your life with me. For me, that puts a whole new perspective on the 10 Commandments. They don't have to be followed in order to get God's promises. They work hand in hand with God's promise to make us safe, to give us shelter, to protect us when we are wandering. When we do our very best to follow God's laws and embrace God's amazing promise to call us God's own and love us, that vision of a world of peace and unity and fulfillment and justice becomes reality. We can't throw out the rules. In fact, the promises that God makes remain strong and in place as we circle the foundation and do our best to keep those stakes standing. 35 years ago, a woman named Helen Martine had a vision. She believed, I am confident, that every human being deserves to be sheltered by God's love and promises. And she didn't see a tent in South Baltimore, and she wanted to raise it. So she gathered a few kindred spirits, and she went to the wilderness called Pigtown. A wilderness where people were suffering. A wilderness where people were hungry and searching for hope. And she committed herself and her congregation and others as well to doing the work of sinking the 10 posts in the middle of that wilderness at St. Paul the Apostle Church. And I believe that we are here today celebrating 35 years of Paul's Place because Helen Martine and all of you and all who started the dream got it. She and others understood that the promises of God need a foundation. They need to be staked out. And once they are, her vision, I would say God's vision of a world without suffering is not only possible, but it becomes a reality. Now, I don't know for sure what Helen would say were her 10 commandments of Paul's Place, but with the help of my fellow staff and some of our guests, I've tried to put together what we believe are the foundations of that tent on Ward Street. And just like the original 10, the first one says it all. You remember the first one. You shall have no other gods before me. Jesus paraphrased it. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. If you do that one, all the rest fall in place, right? Just like that, our number one commandment is one that all others grow out of. You shall treat everyone with dignity and respect. Everyone who walks in our door is a guest, and everyone is treated with dignity and respect, no matter what. Once that one is embraced and lived, you could say we don't need any more, but a tent doesn't stand with only one stake. You shall not judge. Bertha, who was an ambassador who died unexpectedly recently, said in our Out of the Blocks podcast, you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. We never, ever know what stories are walking through our door. We don't know what our guests are living through at any given moment, where they slept last night, what their wilderness is. And so, number 3, you shall meet our guests where they are. We can't relate to most of the stories that walk through the doors of Paul's place. We can't truly understand them. We can't usually even hope to walk in their shoes. But we can meet them where they are and do our very best to be with them on the journey. And that happens when we follow a 4th one. You shall have open doors and open arms. Every day. Every day. My colleague and good friend, Will Thomas, always says, and it becomes number 5, you should entertain strangers with hospitality because you never know when you are in the company of angels. He lives that way every single day, and we all can learn something from him and how he treats every person he meets. I cannot tell you how many times in the 6 years I have been in Paul's place that my life has been touched by an angel who walked in the door of Paul's place to the open arms of Paul's place. Sheila, who helped found our choir, had the voice of an angel and the heart of gold. Pass the love, she'd sing every morning at our 10 o'clock meeting, no matter what she was going through. Miss Ethel is in her 80s, trying to live on her small disability check and her $16 a month food stamps. She came and volunteered every day after she got chemo in the morning. And she was an angel to everyone who walked into Paul's place. Welcome to Paul's place. Want to sanitize your hands? You shall meet the needs of the afflicted. Feed the poor. From day 1, we had this one down. Soup and sandwiches, then sack lunches in trunks and casseroles, and now a full healthy meal every day for between 200 and 400 people. Kids in the Kitchen is a program where our kids are learning to cook healthy food and taking it home on the last weekend of the month to feed their whole family when they're out of food. Shelter the homeless. Working every day, we work with grants to get people out of shelters, out of transitional homes, and into their own homes, and giving them a move-in kit when they move in with sheets and towels and a radio and forks and pots and pans. Care for the sick. Partnering with University of Maryland School of Nursing, who started off by running a clinic out of a closet in the church. And they now run a full nurses clinic for us every Wednesday, a wound clinic every Thursday, and they work with our children every Monday. Speaking of those children, it leads us to, you shall be the person you needed when you were young. When I train our 75 mentors each semester, 6 years ago, we had 2 tutors. Last semester, we had 79 mentors. That's our goal. When I train them, the children and youth director has taught me to say this. When you were struggling as a child and an adolescent, even if your struggles don't come close to what our kids' struggles are, what we know is when you struggle as a kid or an adolescent, it's monumental. Someone was there for you. Come in and be the person you needed when you were young. We are helping with academics for sure. But most importantly, our 75 kids all have a positive role model who comes in and helps them to dream. And they are graduating, and they are going to college. We have a freshman, Rashay, at Morgan State this year, a freshman, Dana, at West Virginia Wesleyan, and Donnell is a sophomore at University of Maryland College Park. his dream school. He got in, and we eventually got him a full scholarship. And then we wanted him to move in the dorm, same as everybody else. So he and Riche and Dana got to shop on Amazon.com and make a list for their dorm room. And we bought everything for them. So they moved in with the comforter and the sheet and the trash can and the shower caddy and the lint rollers and whatever they wanted, so they could move in just like everyone else. Donnell has a mentor who works at NASA, who texts him every day and takes him to lunch about twice a month. I asked him how he did his first year, and he said, I think I did pretty good. I got over 80% in all my classes. Now, for a lot of us, it's been a while since we were in college, but that's pretty darn good for a freshman. But the coolest thing about Donnell doing so well, he's the oldest of 5. So all of a sudden, there are 4 kids in our neighborhood who think it's normal to go to college. My big brother went to college. I get to go to college. Not to mention 75 kids who know that we're going to get them all of that stuff and also a computer and textbooks and whatever they need to succeed. You shall consider yourself a guest, a student, and a servant in the hood. We have so much to learn from our guests. They are so filled with joy, as you saw from the choir today. They say God bless you to us way before we think of saying it to them. We learn about life and about dealing with struggles and about trying again and again and again. And thus, number 9, you shall be persistent. That definitely needs to be added to the list. It is amazing to me every day how hard our guests work to turn their lives around. And sometimes it works, and often it doesn't. And so they try again, and again, and again. And we are there to serve them every time and offer them the shelter in the wilderness that comes from God's promise of hope. As I tried to find that final one, that 10th one, I tried to choose from some very significant offerings that some staff and friends gave us, like the one that came from the choir directors. You shall come to choir on time. You shall not show up to volunteer without confirming it first with Jayna. I kind of like that one. You will always keep the cook happy. You know, the important ones. But they all pale in comparison to that first one, which deserves to be on the list twice. You will always treat everyone with dignity and respect. Because when you do that, lives change. On Friday, Sir Floyd came into my office and said he was so tired. He hadn't slept all week. Oh no, I thought. He's come so far. Because there were a few years in there that he lived in the cab of a semi-truck in an abandoned lot until he got caught. And then he was wandering the wilderness of southwest Baltimore, but trying to turn the corner on his life. And I knew he had been working with Travis, our housing manager, and healthcare for the homeless to get a house. I can't sleep, Miss Jayna. I was afraid to ask why. But I wanted to meet him where he was. And I wanted to have an open door and open arms. And not judge him if he had fallen away again. I wanted to serve him. But most importantly, I wanted to treat him with dignity. And so I listened. I've been up all night, every day this week, kissing the walls of my new house. Kissing the floor of my new house. Roaming that really long hallway in my new house. reading the Bible in my new house. I can't sleep. I'm so blessed. He could not wipe the smile off his face. That same smile that he shares every day with every volunteer and every guest who walks in our door, no matter where he lived, no matter where he was in the wilderness, his voice was always filled with hope. And now he knows the promises of God firsthand. And that tent in the wilderness on Friday looked a whole lot like a house with no furniture, just an air mattress and a Bible on the counter. And after I left Sir Floyd with a move-in kit, so he has sheets and towels and pots and pans and forks and a radio, all donated by volunteers, I couldn't help but think that that tent in the wilderness every single day looks a whole lot like Paul's place, with green awnings, a shelter from the storm, a vision of a better world where the bar is set really high, where all are treated with dignity and respect.